Here working on my brother's C10 with the LS swap. I've done a couple little videos that I'm going to edit into this one also. I rewired the whole engine. There's still a wiring mess, as you can see, because I need to get it running before I clean up all these wires just to make sure that everything's good. Now, last night I checked. I have spark and I have fuel. So, quickest way at this time for me to figure out if it's something internal, a valve, timing, is to do a compression test. Now you can do compression tests on diesels. You clearly are not going to pull a spark plug out, but you're going to pull either a glow plug or an injector out and do it through those holes, because you're just checking the internal compression of that cylinder. So I'm going to show you how to do a compression test on this engine, and then we're gonna look at read all the numbers and see where we're at. So here is a snap-on compression tester. There's different size spark plug holes. So you have, this one's just a deeper version of that. You can tell they're the same thread pitch, same overall diameter. So you're gonna thread one of these, and this is the bigger thread spark plug. You're going to thread this in to the cylinder till it bottoms out. You're going to hook this gauge to it. You're going to disable the fuel so it won't start, and you're going to go crank this engine over, and this is going to pump up. And the PSI is the one we're looking for on the bottom here, and it is going to read in PSI what compression's in this engine. So let's take spark plug out. There we go. We're gonna put this in the spark plug hole. Up. Now, one other thing that I forgot to show you is each of these are going to have a Schrader valve right here, which is the same thing that's in a valve stem on a tire. And you want that in here because as this pumps compression through here up into here and goes into this gauge, if that's not in there, then that compression is going to go right back into that cylinder, and as the valve's open, you're going to lose it. So you're not going to read anything. That needle's just going to bounce. You just want to be able to see this needle move from inside the truck. Now, I've already pulled the fuel pump fuse, so it will not kick on. I know this truck won't start anyway, but I just need to check that or make sure you don't flood the engine out. Okay, that one's showing 0. Thread this in here. Let's see what she's got. Next cylinder back. So that one's got compression. So at this point we know we've got at least one dead cylinder. Could be a burnt valve, could be out of time, could be multiple things. My next step, I think, is going to be to check. I'm going to check all these cylinders. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take that valve cover off and just look in there and see what we got going on. These pliers are made specifically for pulling boots off. So grab a spark plug boot like that, and it wraps around it. You just got to make sure that you grab it good and you don't pinch it, because if you pinch it, you're going to put a hole in it. You're going to lose your spark out through there. But you pinch that around it, pull it back, it'll catch those bigger edges, and then you can work it off that way. Just like that, instead of fighting it with your hands. Okay, pull this valve cover off. See what we got. Starting back at the beginning, this truck wouldn't start, so I checked for fuel, which it had. I checked for spark, which it had. I even went as far as to pull the fuel rails out and crank it over a couple times with the ignition disengaged to make sure that the spray pattern was decent and you were getting enough fuel out of the injectors. It had 54 psi of fuel pressure, so I hooked scanner up to it. The crank was showing RPM as I cranked it over, which means crank signal's reading, but if it's got spark, it's usually reading anyway. So our next step was to do the compression test, which came out to the right front cylinder there has 0 compression. So our next step is going to be to do a cylinder leak down test and try to figure out, is this a valve problem, a piston problem, a ring problem, anything like that. So we're going to do the cylinder leak down test. Let's do that now. So you're going to want your number 1 cylinder, or whatever cylinder you're working on, to be at top dead center. So this is the cylinder we're looking for. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this engine over till we see those valves shut all the way. So, I mean, this is very hard to see, but if you look in there, you can see there's a piston. See that light shining back? That's a piston. Let's go over to the next one and look. You can't see the piston. No piston. Piston. So that one's at top dead center. And when you grab these and wiggle them, they're also loose, so you know you're at top dead center. So what we have here, cylinder leakage tester. This is a US General. I believe this is just a Harbor Freight one, which is, you know, very affordable. So you have your gauge here and your gauge here. So this is your PSI. Your air hose is going to go right here. So you're going to have air coming in. It's going through here. It's going to go through that, just like the compression tester, and into the cylinder. So when it does that, it's going to tell you how much is leaking. So, I mean, preferably you want down here to where you're having no air leak past, but we'll see. So this one's at top dead center. You're going to introduce the air into the cylinder until it reads 0 or close to. So what I found here is when you turn this, when you introduce air into this, you can hear it whistling. You hear it whistling out of that intake. So at this point, the next step is to pull this cylinder head off and see if there's a crack, if it's a head gasket or what. So I'm going to talk to my brother and see what he wants to do with it. So I'm out here a different day, about to pull the cylinder head off this truck so we can see why it has 0 compression in one cylinder. I'm going to go ahead and pop the hood. I got to do a couple things first, and then I will do a time lapse of me pulling the head off, so you don't have to watch the whole process in regular time.
Okay, so here's what I came up with. If you could see in the video, I took a box. This is the front and the back. So this is the first cylinder, second cylinder, third cylinder, fourth cylinder in that row. And the reason you do that is, or in that order, the reason you do that is so you can tell, if you got a bent push rod or anything like that, you know what cylinder it came out of, and then if there was nothing wrong with them, when you put it back together, you know what order they were in. So I'm just rolling these push rods on the ground. And the first cylinder here, right, as you can tell, see I took it apart. This valve is a totally different color than this one, or this one, or this one. So the exhaust valve in this first cylinder that we had no compression in, there's something wrong with it. Now, what's wrong with it? I don't know. And then in the second cylinder, as you can see, the exhaust push rod is completely bent. Now, what caused that? I also have no idea. To figure all that out, we'd have to take the engine completely apart, check timing, check all that stuff. At this point, with the valve problem, the push rod problem, and the LS's being a moderately cheap engine, we're going to go to a junkyard, buy an engine that has a warranty, and then we're going to put it in. So after all that diagnosis, rewiring the thing and then diagnosing it, as of right now, it needs a new engine, and then we can go from there.